Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda Cities ABC YouTube podcast series. So we are here to talk about what is changing the world, what is changing the society where we live, and especially the people that are making this possible. It's all about people in the end of the day, it's about humanity. And in both this series, we've been talking about cities, we've been talking about business, we've been talking about the leaders and the founders and the creators and the inventors. And especially this cities platform, Cities ABC and Open Business Council, which are the organizations behind this podcast series and as well sponsoring and partnershiping that I've been creating. We've been actually talking about a lot of challenges that we're facing in our society, especially when it comes to the biggest challenges in terms of technology, the so-called fourth industrial revolution, the concept of society 5.0, digital transformation, and a lot of areas that I'm particularly interested in around the areas of health tech, MedTech, and a lot of things. So that is partly what we're going to be doing today. So this series has been going for 1 year now. We passed 150 people and around 300 videos plus in our YouTube channel. And what we've been trying to do is really, I think, especially with COVID-19, portraying a lot of people that are doing fantastic work. And I think that we can actually scale and as well create awareness and as well in some cases promote, because that's fantastic work. So that's the case of my special guest for today. I welcome to our series Widy Medina, the founder of and CEO of Telebionix. That is a platform that is really doing a lot of cutting edge work. So just a couple of notes. There's a lot of work that we're going to be talking today. For the people listening to us that are interested in healthcare, in health tech and medtech, this is the right, I think I would say the right podcast and the right interview, because Widy knows about this and loves this and understands this like very few people in the world. So Widy Medina is an innovator and tech entrepreneur. He's the founder and CEO of two technology companies with vast experience ranging from robotics, product design, fabrication, automation, to electronic assembly of consumer products, food and beverage, tech, biotech, medical devices, and pharmaceutical industries. Along with Agya Chiv, he is co-founded Telebionix, a MedTech innovation company headquartered in California. And the company's central objective is to develop industry standards for intelligence and interconnected medical devices, so related with Internet of Things, the IoT, while providing their customers with simple, effective, life-saving products and healthcare technologies. Widy Medina is a bilingual professional and passionate for quality and every customer touch point, user experience, and transformative technologies for a higher quality of life, which is something that I completely subscribe. Just some background about Widy. So he has been working in the areas of a lot of things related to software and technology, and especially from a background in and starting with tech company in automation engineers. He has been looking at a lot of different things in these areas of crossover between technology, automation, Internet of Things, and specifically the areas in this case right now of MedTech. And as well, this is particularly important as we go to the so-called fourth industrial revolution, that all these devices are going to talk with each other. And of course, when it comes to our health data monitoring, it's critical. Some of the milestones just before we finish the introduction. So Tesla Motors lead for main electric motor inverter with automated manufacturing line. So that's a milestone that Widy has got through his previous work. And there's a couple of very important achievements that have been done in these areas that I could go. So I think I'll finish the introduction now, because the purpose of the call is precisely go through this and to know Widy Medina and Telebionix. So Widy, welcome to our series.
Hi, how are you doing? And it's nice to be here. An honor after that introduction. So very happy and excited to be with you.
No, my pleasure. I think we all, I think you guys are doing fantastic work, and I'm particularly excited. So one of the things before we start, so congratulations for being one of the awards of the Open Business Council Cities ABC World Smart Cities Forum awards, which were the first ones as well in terms of inception, but the next ones will be much bigger. But it's really congratulations. And I want to start with, I always start by the beginnings, the inception. So
Sure.
you are quite a mix of different things, like all the people in the entrepreneurship. But I would like to know, how did you start it? From your education, from your cultural background, and as well, how are you right now here from that background and education?
Yeah, first of all, thank you to the Open Business Council. The decision to award us with that particular recognition was incredible for the team. It was a boost to our effort, and a validation to everything we're doing. So thank you for the organization. It was amazing to have that on our book of milestones. Um, Regarding the background, it's very interesting. After that introduction, I really have to say that I come from very humble beginnings. I'm originally from Puerto Rico, and started with a super small family business back there. It was at the core of what industrial development is. The business was a machine shop. The machine shop, it's nothing more a place where you create piece parts for machines, right? So we started at the very beginnings of machinery construction, of support to different market verticals. Down in Puerto Rico, we had the blessing of having a boom of pharmaceutical and biotech during the late 70s, 80s, and it went all the way till the 90s. And we took advantage of that by supporting pharmaceutical and biotech industry. That got me the exposure to that environment. As a family business, I was that little kid walking around grease, stainless steel parts, and people cutting and creating, right? And it really poked my brain to the point of deciding to go to an engineering school. So I did my engineering studies in Georgia Tech and Polytechnic University of Puerto Rico. After that, I came back with like every young guy comes back home, right, with 3,000 and 4,000 different ideas of how to do things that I got exposed through on my education. So luckily enough, I have a family that always supported my ideas and allowed me to convert the family business into kind of an automation house. So we started from just making piece parts for machine to building complete system, complete machines, complete automated solutions, and we grow rather quickly after a lot of years of doing that. We decided um, to look for other opportunities. The family business is still running. The employees are running now the family business, so we're super happy about that story because now they are supporting themselves with something that we started back in 1977. So it's an old institution down in Puerto Rico. I went to pursue an opportunity at Universal Instruments, New York. A great company with great people. They gave me an opportunity to grow, to expose myself to automation for high-speed automation for electronics. I had great mentors inside that company. I think that I learned on that company 3 times what I learned on the university. They gave me the opportunity to work at the liaison on projects for between Apple and the contract manufacturers in China. So I spent a couple of years jumping back and forth between the U.S. and the contract manufacturers in China, and that also exposed me to the complexities of design for manufacturing, the complexities of high-speed manufacturing, the complexity of electronic assembly, and the electronic assembly at the forefront of technology, right? So that was another school that was incredible for me. There, I met a lot of brilliant people, usually way more intelligent than myself, and we were able to um, to create some technology that accelerated the purpose for our customers, and created a great team together, which we still are in one way or another, together, jumping into Telebionix, which is our new baby.
Well, impressive. I want to touch that because as an immigrant myself, one of the things I respect is people that come from, like you said, modest origins, and they achieve big things, and through a lot of work, a lot of commitment, and something that, of course, especially with the narratives that we've been having international, actually around history, normally immigrants are always taken not in the right approach, but as well the different culture, because of course, if you grow up in a culture, you have normally more capacity to adapt to that culture than if you go from a different culture and you have to mix different ways of looking at it. I want to touch that because it's particularly interesting for someone like you that is working in technology and automation. And of course, there's mostly studies that most of the people normally that create more value for countries are normally immigrants and the first generation and second that do a lot of work and hard work. But I would like to touch point one, your change from Puerto Rico to US, which is
Yeah.
particularly different cultures, as well the adaptations, and as well the work you've been doing to mix these two different cultures to create right now a company that is really headquartered in LA. That is, of course, one of the premium destinations in the world, but as well trying to build a global company.
I'm super glad that you touched that point because that's very dear to my heart. And the company today represents exactly the multicultural approach that was injected in me from day one, right? And it was a culture shock, after being in Puerto Rico for 30 something years, right? And suddenly then. Moving to upstate New York, it was definitely a culture shock. I was very lucky that where I landed in Universal Instruments allow me to even get more exposed to multicultural cultural environments, right? As you can imagine, when you're working with a company like Apple, where you're working with company like Tesla, and you're working with all these companies, have understood already that the best mix of expertise, of knowledge, is when you open yourself to multicultural environments. It doesn't mean it's easy to assimilate the new culture of the U.S. But I can tell you that some of the bigger players are actively and knowingly understanding and accepting that there's no other way that to open themselves to a multicultural team that can bring all the experiences from all over the world. So I was one of the lucky few that even coming in, was surrounded by these multicultural teams, from day one, and it was all for the best. Um, what that entailed is that because of that exposure, our company today, Telebionix today, it's almost like a representation of the ONU, right? We have people from all over the place. We have people that represent Asian background, China, Japan, um, Syria, Iran, Egypt, France, Portugal. It's myself from Puerto Rico, people from the U.S. And even though we are a small team, I have an internal joke that we're definitely the ONU, because we represent almost every culture and country and I don't think that there's two people from the same place in the team, right? So it's an amazing thing how we represent what the future of collaboration should be, right? What the openness of multicultural groups, efforts, companies should become, right? In a super small group. So I'm super proud of that. I think that the background helped me to get there. I think that the being lucky, and I know that some people are not being lucky of coming into an accepting team, a team that did not look at the background as a problem, but look at your background as an asset to add flavor to the company. I know that's not the every case, but I have to say I was very lucky that I had that opportunity coming in.
And that is beautiful because it's exactly the same I feel. And to be honest, it's not just what you and me feels, because I think the most successful companies in the world are the ones working on this. Because in the end of the day, only companies like that can be prepared to face the challenge we have in the world, and as well to come up with solutions that keep the diversity and the heterogeneity
Yeah.
of the world, and as well the cultural diversity. And well, congratulations for that. It's something that I nurture, and I try to welcome to this series, because one of the things that I think, if we don't nurture this, we have a more dystopic and
Yeah.
probably, especially with all this technology, a very crazy world. And I think we can have something very beautiful as well if you do it right. Of course, with all the challenge that comes, but that obliges us to get out of our comfort zone. Because if you have, for instance, just the tone of voice from culture to culture, it's different from language. So if you have Spanish is louder than, for instance, the Swedish or Norwegian, and it might be, but at the same time, if you put everyone together, you have to get out of your box and try to find different solutions. And I think that is as well in history, all the biggest cities are the ones that have more heterogeneous cultures and different things. And that is historical, but sometimes we forget that. But well,
Yeah.
coming back to what you guys are doing. So let us know what is Telebionix. I think it's really important from you. Of course, we're going to put a lot of information, but why did you create Telebionix, and what is Telebionix?
Um, Telebionix is a MedTech company on essence, right? We have to be very careful about our definition, because I always like to include the possibilities of growth, of expansion, of the opportunities of allowing lessons learned to create new things, right? So Telebionix today is a company that has that we were basically created at the early beginnings of the pandemic situation. So you can imagine how that takes how that experience takes a center seat on defining the company, right? A major historical event. You're starting a company at the beginnings of that major historical event that shook the world, and that definitely helps put some definition on the purpose. At that point, what we decided is, let's concentrate on asking what is needed out in the market. We have a background of product design. We have a background of manufacturing, of design for manufacturing, high speed electronics. We have all of that. How can we use this, right, to help the world, and to create a company that we think can go on a lot of on a long time, providing support to the world. So at that point, we started kind of doing some interviews to healthcare professionals, to the people that was at the forefront of the situation, pandemic situation, and with just one question: what do you need? How can we help? Right? And and after hundreds of interviews, there was a clear definition of what was needed. Right? We saw that the how hospitals were overwhelmed with patients coming in, the management of patient issue, right, and then getting support and health support to all of the patients timely, securely, and without risk, right. So we saw all of those things, and everything kind of line up and say, uh, there needs to be better tools to treat patients remotely, right? And to give the healthcare professional the right data so that they can do their triage. They can manage patients in a better way. So so that's what we kind of added to our brains and to our brainstorm sessions, and Remo Sense came up. Remo Sense being the flagship product for Telebionix now. Um, and uh, and what we did with Remo Sense is that we created a tool that is non-existent, right? We created a tool that is very unique and that allows an effective and efficient way to do telemedicine. Um, and if I need to go a little bit further, without going into details that we will go later in the conversation, what what we're bringing to the market is a unit that is capable of measuring all of the biometric information that is needed for a doctor to do a true patient consultation, both remotely. So we fall into a definition of an RPM provider, remote patient monitoring system provider. We added our flavor on top of that, and we added our uniqueness on top of that, and that's something that we can discuss later in the conversation.
Impressive, and I think it's really a very important thing. So I want to touch a couple of things related with what you do in Telebionix,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to this kind of multiple ways of looking at MedTech in a kind of transversal way.
Mhm.
So can you explain this? Because of course you guys are touching Internet of Things, you're touching medical technology for the ones that are less familiar with the concept. And these are very sensitive areas because you're dealing with the very sensitive data, you're dealing with machines and sensors touching with each other. And this touches, of course, the most important thing that is us as humans and our data. So can you tell us how did you build the frame and the architecture for this? Point one, and then point two, how you are scaling this in a secure and trustful way.
Thank you. That's a very good question, and I will try to answer it as summarized as possible, because this can be a thesis if we allow it to be, right? We could be talking about this for days, but what did we do, right? Let's start with what challenges we had, right? The challenges that we had is that you usually see out in the market a product that is a single modality product. When we talk about single modality, it's a product that can measure one particular biometric point, being that an oximeter for blood oxygenation, being that oxygenation level, I should say, being that a digital stethoscope, being that a thermometer. And usually they concentrate on the performance and the data management of their particular sensing capabilities. In our case, we were extremely brave, I believe. My team was extremely brave to say, okay, so we're going to put an all-in-one thing here, right? We're going to make sure that all those modalities come into play in one device, which will allow the data to be um, better aligned from multiple patients and from multiple device standpoint, right? If you control that in one device, you're still using a qualified, certified, FDA approved temperature sensor, for example, and that is present on all of your units. And on top of that, you create an SpO2 sensor, and that is distributed equally in all of your units. And the same thing for digital stethoscope and ECG. When you have that, and you control the design parameters, the manufacturing parameters, the processes to create each of those devices and you create thousands of those devices, suddenly you have a data set point that makes sense because they all draw back to the same calibration process, to the same engineering process, to the same hardware and software components inside that. And for the first time, you can correlate this data, right? So for just for to understand a little bit better how important this is that now you can see the relationships between a temperature reading and a particular ECG reading and a particular um, um, stethoscope information, right? You can now correlate all this data. So that adds a layer to what we have. And I think this starts to answer your question where, yeah, we are hardware, software design, all very controlled into one particular environment or product. And all the data that we are creating now expose a new layer on top of it, the layer of how do we protect this data? How do we manage this data? How do we correlate this data? And how do we use the data to improve not only the product, but level of information that we provide to end users and healthcare professionals. So we needed to, on top of the hardware software, create an AI layer, right? So there is an artificial layer on top of the product, looking at all these modalities, right? Looking at all of this data, doing that correlation, matching that correlation to a possible diagnostic from a professional, right? The professional gets all this information and does a diagnostic. And now, for the first time, we have all this information correlated to a condition or a diagnostic from a professional, and that is true machine learning. That is true. We can apply a true AI layer to that to eventually become predictive, right? And that will be the goal, to eventually become somewhat predictive and announce those predictions to professionals to make a final decision. Um, and if we see a set of conditions, the unit can tell the professional or the healthcare professional, this set of conditions matches these other diagnostics that were done before. So that's super powerful, right? But it's also like in the superheroes, power comes with a lot of responsibility. That is true, right? That there's a lot of power in the data management, and it also comes with the responsibility of how to manage that, right? So we are currently working on blockchain technologies to make sure that the data is kept with the best possible integrity, right? So now you have hardware, software, you have an AI layer. Now you're also working with blockchain technology, and this adds another layer of, uh, of attention, which is security. And I'm super lucky to have in my team one of the top thought leaders in cybersecurity as my equal partner on the company. So Agias Shibib is that person, and he brings to the team that knowledge of cybersecurity. So you can imagine how important it is when my co-founder background is 20 years plus of cybersecurity background. So every time that I'm trying to do something on the engineering side, I have these judge and controller in front of me saying, well, yeah, but we need to have this information secure, and we need to put all these layers. So it is a beautiful opportunity, Dennis, in a long answer to your question, to have a technology that it's basically putting everything that is new and out there in the marketplace together into one effort. Medical devices, MedTech, cross-functional analysis, AI, blockchain for data management, cybersecurity on top of it as a summary of everything. You can imagine we don't have a lot of time to sleep, right? But we're enjoying every minute of it because it really is exposing us to everything that is at the forefront and cutting edge of technology out there.
It's impressive. So I want to go through one thing. So let's go through. Can you give us one of the demonstration of some of the solutions you're building? Because I think it's really go from the theory to the practice. And let's say one case study that you want to show with our audience and with people listening to us.
If I understood your question correctly, what is it that we think that our device has one thing that makes it transcendental to everything, right?
Exactly.
Right. So I will start with that. I will start with one case study to explain how transcendental this is. So and we can expand on that. Imagine one patient. I'm going to give you a patient that is an elderly patient in the middle of this can apply in pandemic or non-pandemic situations, right? You have an elderly patient, limited mobility of that patient, a high-risk patient if you expose this patient to a hospital or even a doctor office, right? Because their immune system is already compromised just because of age, right? And not even considering any particular conditions of that patient, and that patient staying at the comfort of their home, having a conversation, just like the one that we're having right now, with their doctor, and their doctor instructing them to use a super simple handheld system that can measure all of the biometrics, that he can point out to the patient, please insert your finger in this particular portion of our unit, and now we're measuring the SpO2. As we are talking, this is going on a user interface in front of the doctor, and he sees exactly what's happening. We can do the same thing with electrocardiograph information. We can do the same thing with body temperature information, but the beauty of it is that we can still do that with stethoscope capabilities, right? So the doctor can instruct the patient, can you put the unit in your chest in this particular position, and remotely being recording that sound information, which allow them to do an immediate check on this patient, but also to have data and sound data recorded into the file of the patient. Now this doctor, without moving this patient, can do a true diagnostic of the situation, which may prevent the patient from either going to a hospital or his office. And he can even prescribe with more information, new medications, new things. Now, what did that entail? Security for the patient. It entails also the comfort for the patient, right? It entails that data is recorded and correlated all with that particular session. It's not. It entails the reduction of human error when you go to a doctor office and your nurse is transferring the information from the device to the system. There's already an opportunity for error on data entry. So you're eliminating error in that data entry. But on top of that, one of the assets that society have, there is a limited asset, it was proving during the pandemic situation, the healthcare professional is a limited asset of society, right? There's a limited number of them for the amount of people that need to be attended. And now we are freeing up time of that asset that the doctor has now increased the efficiency to double, triple the efficiency. He can tend more patients. He can react with a larger and have an effect on a larger part of the population. Can you imagine that situation during pandemic, right? And then post-pandemic, the same thing. Now transfer that, Dinis, to obstetric. Pregnant ladies that we don't want them to be exposed to whatever they can catch on a hospital or a doctor office. They can stay at the comfort of their house. They can do more checkups because it's so easy now that they can do more checkups. And not only to limited mobility, you can extend that to people like you and me that we have, we're healthy, we can move to an office, we can do all of that, but we have limited time, right? So we can take care of our health better, eliminating the excuse of, oh, I need to go to a doctor, oh, I need to set up this appointment that is going to cut half my day, and suddenly we're bringing another thing that is important, and that we're always consuming, that is time. We're bringing time back to people, patients, and doctors, and the system. That's one of the most expensive commodities, and this system allows to bring time back to everybody in the circle.
Yeah, so this is really very important, and I think it's going to be, I would say, especially as we get more and more digital, all of this becomes more important. So I want to touch two areas that are particularly important. So the first one is, like you mentioned, this implies a huge amount of trust, especially in organizations like yours, and as well how you build this, but as well a lot of things related with countries' data protection, and as well even lack of legacy systems and different things. So how do you cope with this? Because for instance, let me give you an example for people listening to us. For instance, I had 2 years ago kind of a crazy symptom that I could not correlate, and I had to do a lot of exams and a lot of sanity check to see what it was happening. I think it was after I traveled quite a lot, and I might have got just something. And I remember that I'm in London, so it's central, one of the top cities in the world. Mm-hmm. And I went to my GP, so my doctor, local doctor, and he asked me, okay, let's just do all these analyses. And one of the things that for me was very awkward as a technologist, I remember that when I went to do the analysis in the first floor of the department, I was asked these questions, then they did like blood analysis and stuff like that. Then I went to the floor afterwards, I did it again, and I noticed that the data that was put in the computer in the first floor was not passing to the second floor. Yeah. And then of course as a tech, why these things are not? So that means everything I did in the first floor didn't match at all in the second floor. And as well, everything that the MP had about me was not matching with these things. So I actually had double standards of data. Yeah. And of course I realized that, okay, this is in London, same as in the rest of the world. So we're still on this kind of very crazy solution. So this is the first example. The second example is someone in my network that is a billionaire that just decided to do 1 week of full analysis to his body and super analysis. And they went to a clinic, private clinic in Switzerland. And he spent, I think it was $1 or $2 million. And he did an entire checkup of his body. So this shows the paradox of our times, where I'm in London and I'm actually quite from a healthy area and wealthy area of the world, say less compared to the rest. At least I'm in the top 1% or 0.1%. But the challenge is that then we have the 0.01% that gets this. So how do you see this, especially in what you're doing at Telebionix? Because I think I'm particularly interested. Of course, I know what you guys are doing, but I'm trying to dismantle the complexity of the work you're doing, and as well the complexity of the world we are in.
And this is a stress point for the healthcare 4.0, and I think that after pandemic we need to call it 5.0, where we're already finding everything, right? So if we need to talk to each other, and I'm an advocate of that. There has to be a conversation where we come to meet all of the requirements of the data security, but also of data sharing with through secure channel to the people that should have access to that data, or that the end user allows that data is shared to, right? As you've proven already, right? And that there are still things that we need to do on having centralized information somehow, or having at least a way to reblock all the information that it's spread into bits and pieces, and centralizes into a cohesive information set or data set for patients or for anything regarding healthcare. I'm an advocate of communicating, and we're not doing that. That's a major issue. During this pandemic, it was clear. It was made and exposed, right? That that the communication was lacking at every level. Devices were not communicating to each other. Devices were not communicating to systems. Systems were not communicating to other systems. Data was not flowing in the right way, and everything became overwhelmed. Uh, as professionals, and me at the position that I am as CEO of Telebionix, I have two ways to go forward, and I hope that everybody chooses the right way to go forward. There is the way instinctively that everybody that is creating product, creating technology that is at the edge, the cutting edge. Instinctively, everybody just go and just put their arms around their technology, shut all of the windows, right? Black out the world and try to protect what they have, and thinks that they have the next unicorn in the world and that they're gonna become the next Apple but for medical products, right? That's one style. Um, we know what that will result in. That will result in many puddles of information that do not crosstalk. That will result in multiple standards instead of a common standard of communication between devices and systems. And that is going to result in um, going back in time instead of forward, right? That is going to result in having all this technology, but then not being able to use the potential of that technology in favor of the system, which means the healthcare system, or in favor of the patient, which is even more important. All of this information are in silos. We are falling into that trap. We're doing it again, and we need to stop. We need to pause, and we need to open a round table of communication between the decision makers of the governmental agencies, the certification agencies, and the manufacturers, the data handlers, right? The ERP companies, all of this has to be a true and open conversation. And if we need to do it with one particular industry or vertical, why not healthcare, which is something that is agnostic to where you're from, what your culture is, your background, or how rich or poor you are. It's a human right? So why not start with healthcare openly having this conversation? And I have, a great, even though we are a startup conversation, a startup level, and we wear 20 hats during the day. I'm fighting the fight of communicating with not only my peers, but my competitors. Not only my competitors, but the agencies. Not only the agencies, but the government. We have to change the narrative, change the platform, and start standardizing into a way that we can all add value to one common purpose, which is healthcare as a human right, data sharing in a secure way, and data availability for quick decision making for every person in the world, right? As a right. You should not have a person going to an emergency and their information and health historical background being available to treat that patient correctly and securely. So that's my take there.
I think it's a great one, and I think you touch the most important thing, because I think this is really the key element. Without this, we cannot really move to a better balanced society. We might create even multiple velocity, and I think this brings to the field of science fiction, where we have augmented humans. We have all these things that are possible for us right now. The French government recently launched a public documentation about the bionic soldiers. Eric Schmidt, the founder of Google, just discussed recently the possibility of augmenting soldiers using AI and a lot of different things. So this is happening as we speak. So I would like to look at two angles. So the first one is the angle of ethics. And I think this is particularly important because, of course, a company like yours that is a startup and is quite ambitious and, of course, working already the likes of Tesla Motors and other things, you have a big opportunity here. So I would like to understand from an ethical perspective, and for instance, we did recently a summit actually where we had as well the awards, where we had actually an expert in AI ethics. And so I would like to hear how do you tackle this, because you have a great overview, because we have multicultural, so you can look at things not only through one perspective, but multiple perspectives. And like you mentioned, you have a very multiple cultural diversity in the company, which is very important. But for instance, are you touching right now in terms of business developing just US, you want to launch worldwide? I would like to do this both from a business perspective and an ethical perspective. And I think it's very important for people listening to us or investors, but everyone, because this is, I think, concerns of all of us.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting because every time we open that conversation within the team, you got as many point of view as people you have in the team. There's always a unique approach of every individual of defining the ethics around the AI and intelligence augmentation, if you want to call it in a different way, and data analysis. This is a conversation that is difficult. It will be difficult, but it's one that we need to tackle. And we need to accept the inevitable. There are reservations always as a human instinct. There is reservations on anything that is new. There is reservations of accepting anything that is new, and AI is transcendentally new, even though it's a 40-year-old technology in one way or another, and being developed in that time. To what it is today and the potential that it will have tomorrow, we need to accept it. There's no stopping this thing, right? That this just gonna happen. It's happening, and there's no way to stop it. So what we need to do is we need to see it as every new technology that is available to humanity, and we have to be sincere first with ourselves in order to move to the next step, right? Every major change in technology can be used for good or for bad. You can use, I mean, from nuclear to explosives to robots to I mean, any technology, right? That you bring, and that is a game-changing technology. Yes, we could use it for good or bad. But if you can see the potential of what artificial intelligence can do for humanity on the good side, we should all really come to, like I said, another round table and see how companies like us, right, how we use that power of the technology in pro of the user, in pro of the person, in pro of the individual. That's where we need to refocus things, right? What we need to do is that we need to make sure that we empower not the entity, that we empower not the government entities around the world, that we empower the individual with the AI. I think that if we start looking at AI from that point of view and start the conversation from not the maybe scary model of how do governments, how do entities, how do large corporations use this information, but how does the AI layer helps the individual, and how can we focus its power on giving power to the individual, decision-making power, data, personal data control power, financial power, healthcare information power, right? All of that, on all of those verticals, AI is playing a major role today, right? But if we change the narrative to, instead of pointing to the high governmental entities, going down and pointing, using the technology to the advantage of the individual, I think that the narrative changes. I think that the acceptance level changes. And I think that that will allow us to open up more the conversation, um, and truly define it in a way that is ethical. The only way to move it on an ethical way is to change the direction of where we are pointing that technology to. That's my point of view on it.
And I think it's the only way to go. So I want to
Yep.
touch right now. I will be conscious of your time. I want to talk a bit more of the company, but I just one more on this kind of more
Oh,
bigger
of course.
questions.
This is
So
exciting for me, this.
no, I understand. So one of the things that I wrote actually an essay in the paper about hacking the DNA of humanity, and ironically, initially it was like a metaphor, but then actually I realized that effectively that has been already doing. There's a couple of universities in the world that actually been hacking the DNA and trying to augment the DNA and do augmented mix of integrating this. And then of course we're talking about the quantified self, the
Mhm.
idea of taking our system and all this stuff. So I think with Telebionix, as you guys grow your data and solutions, and you mentioned your one important case study. So how are you going to deal with these big problems that are happening as we speak? Because for instance, with Internet of Things,
Mhm.
even right now, just looking at the data on my iPhone, I
Mhm.
can know more or less how much I sleep, how much I walk, how much and I know, I sometimes I don't want to know, but I know that uh, because effectively, if I look the quantity of time I spend on my phone and I look at the quantity of time I spend with my son or my daughter, I don't probably
Yeah.
feel very well, very well. But I think it's this kind of things that are happening as we speak. So how do you look at into these things? Point one, in terms of the relationship between the quantification and the data of these
Mhm.
sensors and these things we're doing.
Mhm.
Point one, and I know that this is of course from a more B2B side or B2C
Mhm.
side, but of course when you go to B2B, let's say if you look at, for instance, like Google that did a study for the UK healthcare system, and then they're actually for a couple of hospitals, and they're actually doing having most of the data of the healthcare in the UK, which is
Mhm.
very easy.
Mhm.
So how do you deal with this from a, I would say, compliance perspective, but as well from a strategy perspective? Because of course, having this data can have a sense of responsibility, and you touch blockchain because, for instance, and sorry, my questions are quite big, but I think
Mhm.
you understand what I'm coming from.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of
Is
course.
that, for instance, if you manage to put all the data of an entire country in blockchain
Mhm.
and using machine learning to understand, you can understand all the diseases of the country, all the problems of nutrition, and you can actually effectively save most of the lives.
Mhm.
And understand that, okay, might have a problem with water, might have a problem, whatever. But then we have as well the other side of the coin, that is what happened during the Second World War with the Nazis and the IBM, or at
Mhm.
least the first inception of IBM, that was using machines to, in the end of the day, kill Jewish and create the Holocaust.
Mhm.
So all of these things have been happening, but now, of course, the considerations and what we can do is really scary to say less. So how do you see this dark side and the positive side? Because of course, I always like to look at the two things.
Yes, and that's exactly a continuation of our last of the last question, because if you there's always a good way and a bad way, and we have to create the gray zone in between those two. Um, the way that we are, at least within the walls of Telebionix, right? What we're trying to do is not only talk the talk but walk the walk, right? We said about empowering the user. That's exactly what we want to do. We want to empower the user by owning that healthcare information, by deciding the how that information is shared, where is shared, and not only that, but we truly believe that data and healthcare data is another asset that you have. and you can use that asset to help society, and you can do so on making it completely anonymous but available if you decide to do that as a user, and that's a personal decision that we think each user should have. So what we're doing is that we are empowering, again, just like we said before, empowering the person to own its own information. We're already working on a way to convert the healthcare information into basically the same thing as a coin, right? They own this thing. It is encrypted. It is on blockchain technology. I have my information, but now as a member of society, I can decide if that data is used for collectively, for smart cities, for smart countries after that, right? And smart continents, so forth, until you become a smart world, right? If this small granular peck of information can be one grain of sand on the beach of knowledge for the world, then they can decide personally to say, yes, I'm gonna anonymize this information, right? To the point that my personal data is available, but my health information, it's there as an add-on to the data set of my city, my country, my continent, right? And you start adding up those pieces of information. I think that, again, if we choose to go and empower the user to select and decide, democratically decide what level of information, how much they want to share, but contribute to society by sharing the information anonymized. I think that's the key. I think that's the key to then have this information, have it available to make decisions. You don't have to make decisions of the people in your country by knowing their name, social security, and deep personal data. But if you want to know how you want to improve the social environment around the people of your country, health information is important, and it can be just anonymized. That's all the decision makers need to know. And but the power to give that information should go back to the user. Ethically, I believe in that approach. Our company is moving in that direction. We think that your healthcare information is an asset, and you should be able to manage that asset. It is also your property, and you can choose to not only give it away for a governmental analysis if you wanted to at the level that you want, but imagine also if you can sell it to people that are doing social studies, and you can sell your information anonymized. Now you are making money out of your own information, that's something that you own. Now it's a true asset, right? So again, empowering the people to use their information as a monetary thing. This is something that if you want it, it has a value, and I want that value to be recognized. I think that is an approach that people will start to look up to, because now they see that information as, oh, true, then it has value. If it does have value to not only me but society, then I get this incentive to then be more responsible, take my information, go every day and check my health, keep getting historical data. It's an incentive because I'm adding to something that is of value to me, and that I can share with the world if I wanted to on an agnostic way.
Yeah, I love that. And I love exactly what you said. Of course, the challenge is how we can do this in a world that is full of different cultures, and as well in different velocities. So I think that in itself, it's probably another workshop, and probably definitely one of
That's
the best
another 2
sections.
hours.
Yeah, another 2 hours. So I want to go right now to the company and the way you're taking the company. I know that you're a startup that you're looking for more funding. And I think it's important because we have a diversity of audience around the world. But I would like to understand how you've been taking the company in terms of funding, in terms of preparation, in terms of business developing, in terms of traction. So a bit of listening to that and understanding how you are right now growing as well, the presence of Telebionix and the growth and the strategy roadmap.
Sure. As with every baby it was up to a couple of maybe even a month ago, it was self-funded. So everything that the funding members have made through sweat and tears through our lives, we put into this endeavor because we know that it's going to be transformational and instead of disruptive, I like to use transformational. It's going to be transformational. It's going to change the it's going to change the way telemedicine is done. It's going to give telehealth providers an immense and leverage and a tool to really become a service that goes beyond what they're doing today. So self-funded until up to a month ago, then we started opening up to seed funding. We have completed a proof of concept and minimal viable product design. We are now finishing up the first unit that we're going to do a private launch with. So we're super excited about that step. We are openly going directly to VCs and accepting VCs that want to discuss our plan and business plan to go together. And yes, we're open to that conversation. At the same time, we will very soon be opening the opportunities not only to VCs and registered investors, but also we think that because of how our company is done on the core values, we want to have the common folk that is not a registered investor also go and contribute. So we should be opening on crowdfunding platforms in the next couple of weeks to allow the common individual that feels that our message is the right message forward and that wants to support our efforts to participate also in this endeavor, in this adventure going forward. So that's kind of where we are today. The next steps on our mission is complete all the efforts with the FDA and make sure that we have a strong and solid platform. Because of the complexity of our system, we want to make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted before we open up beyond the private launch. But our goal is we're very aggressive. Our goal is by the end of this year, we already have units out in the market. So we're super aggressive, and you can believe that sleeping time is a luxury right now.
Oh, congratulations. I know the feeling, and I know as well that you're trying to do. So one question that I'm interested. So for people looking to potentially engage, and you mentioned crowdfunding. So how do you take that, and as well, where can people find this information about the company? Of course, there's the website, but other things that you eventually can highlight for people eventually interested that are listening to us right now.
Sure, we will be in our website. It's telebionix.com. It's a very simple way to get there. We have a news section on it. We're gonna be announcing when those crowdfunding platforms are gonna be open for people to go. We definitely have a great marketing team with us that is going to go social media and promote that. We're gonna use every possible information avenue and social media avenue that we have to let the people know that we are a company that has the user and the people at the center, our end users at the center, from investment to using the product, right? You can be part of this effort. You can be part of this company. and we're not at a different level. We're right there with the end users at the same level creating this up. So we're going to use every possible channel to let them know when we're open. They're still not open. There's a couple of weeks down the road, but it will be definitely a major milestones for us to open up to the public, to also invest on our endeavor.
So can you specify a bit more? And I know that we're conscious. I will try to finish in a while, but just I'm still curious about that. So, how do you build the relationship with the community? Because I think that's an area that very few, especially in this area, very few people succeed. And I
Yes.
think it's a great opportunity for people looking at us and as well potential that, for instance, people that are interested in health and they want
Mhm.
to have a bit of control of their health because I think that's a big area, especially
Yes.
if you work in creating social skills and different areas in that direction.
I think that we start like we said, right? We start by showing them that we are a people's company, right? What our product is for them, is designed for them. It will definitely be a tool that healthcare professionals, health companies, and all of that will improve their services through our system. But in essence, it is a people's product, right? It is a people empowering product. And our focus is in that direction, right? So what we're trying to do is, from inception, from the beginning of this company, we started with a understanding. Not only the interviews were not only for healthcare, but it was for healthcare professionals, always also for the common folk, right? The user, the end user. We interviewed a lot of people. Um, the way that we are designing our interfaces, we have an app that is the communication between the device and the person, and the end user. That app has to be simple so that a 10-year-old can manage it and a 90-year-old can work with it. Our plan is to then open up for sessions where we, with these new tools of the web, we can do training sessions. We can discuss with people on roundtable conversations, what not only what our product is, but protection to the data, the management of the data. This is a new concept, so we will have to be very aggressively talking to the end user in every possible via that we have. This being one of them, this kind of platform being another one of them, where we address and get to address all the questions and get to the individual that is the end user. So we are an open company. We have ways to communicate directly with our team. When we do the public release, we are going to have a very strong product use environment orientation, and a 24/7 way of communicating with our team, with the people that can support the uh, the product and the usage of it. So it is a very complex mission that we have in front of us, but one that we are getting the right people aligned to help us with, and eventually that we are going to have a direct communication line with the end user.
Tati, I love that part, and of course, count on us to do that. So I think we passed 1 hour now, so I think I'll wrap up right now. I have a lot of questions, but I think because there's some of these topics need a bit of digestion, I think it's
Yes.
very important. So just last thing, you mentioned your website, but where can people find the app? Where can people find all these different things that you mentioned so far?
So website is one way. We have Twitter channel under Telebionix. Also on Twitter, you can follow us there, and we can communicate directly and very efficiently, updating everybody. We have a Facebook channel also for the people that are in LinkedIn and want to approach us from a B2B side, or or BCs that are interested into communicating with us. We have Telebionix also LinkedIn. Personally, I am also there, and I can definitely have individual communications with people that are interested in pushing this project forward. Um, so we are at every possible channel under the Telebionix name. You just plot that name. We're there. We were lucky to have a very unique identifier, so it's not difficult to find us. Become part of the narrative. Become part of the follow us on every one of those channels. We're going to be announcing every major milestones. They're going to be coming up in by the hour, because we're aggressively moving forward. We have news, very good news coming up about partnerships, relationships. We're not only working we're not working on an enclosed environment. We're working with major partnerships, major relationships with other players and entities that can accelerate and augment our potential and accelerate time to market. So yes, please follow us on any one of those medias, and we'll be happy to answer your questions, address your concerns, and get you as part of the narrative. You being a BC, you're being a user, you're being a telemedicine owner, company owner, whichever that is. We want to have you on the conversation. We want to have these people engage with us, and we want this company to be a company that brings back to society and to smart cities and to the future of humanity overall.
So just as a last question, and as you know, I'm particularly interested in smart cities and solutions that make a bridge between
Mm-hmm.
society, enterprises, and organizations, cities, and things like that. So can you tell us some case studies of things that you're doing in that area? Because I think there's an area that I'm particularly interested, but I want to understand how eventually you're creating solutions, and eventually I have a couple of suggestions myself, but I'm interested as well for our audience to
Mm-hmm.
understand how you're building these solutions. Let's say in
Right.
the case
So
of smart cities or relationships with cities, B2B and B2C.
sure. Um, as you know, we are one of the major verticals when it comes to smart city, right? You have um, along security and all of the other infrastructure and transportation and all of those things that are super important for a smart city. Uh, the one of the major things that you need to have is healthy individuals in the city, right? So that it really it becomes a society that can enjoy the advantages of smart city. We were very lucky to already have initial conversations with one of the leading persons in smart city knowledge and purpose around the world, with this Peter Sean. I believe that it's a common friend that we have, because
Yep.
you're also in the smart city environment. We have a couple of meetings with Peter. It really rounded up the effort for us, and the definition of what the effort is going to be. We're going to be participating on a on a particular activity this week that we can maybe share later when we distribute the interview as part of the information, because it's in the next couple of days. I don't want to do that publicly without Peter approval, but yeah, we're going to be participating, engaging in smart cities effort. The way that we are doing it is, first, that way is getting involved with one of the top efforts, right, entities doing this, getting involved directly with one of the leading persons into smart city with Peter, and obviously the relationship with Open Business Council, which has a strong background also on smart cities, is important for us. So we want to nurture that, and we want this to be the beginning of a long-term relationship, and that we can all add to that. So What we're doing there is that as an initial step is getting involved at the initial step, but also everything else that we've done in this discussion applies to that, right? Is the narrative of ethics, is the narrative of data management, is the narrative of data exchange, is the narrative of controlling the exchange of information correctly through a smart city system. So if we go back, the answer to what else are we doing, we can rewind all this conversation and play it from the beginning, and it basically answer that question, right? We're doing everything that we can to make sure that eventually this data set, this information that is so critical for a smart city to perform, and I have mentioned that a couple of times during this interview, is because I think that we need to make sure that information adds to the collective value, so that the city, the area where we live, can manage resources wisely for the convenience of every member of that society, of that group. So that's what we're doing to add value to that, is making sure that the data that has to do with healthcare, it is managed responsibly, ethically, and always in the favor of the end user, but with a level of social responsibility on top of it.
That's amazing. Well, congratulations, and I think looking forward to see the progress of what you're doing. We're going to continue promoting, and I'm particularly interested myself on these areas because it's really the cutting edge and the most important areas of humanity, let's put it that way. So there's much more questions, but I think in the context of time, I think this is the first approach. I think people get an overview about yourself, but as well everything you do in the rest. So I appreciate this and looking forward. Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for allowing me the space, and it was nice to have this conversation with you. Have a great day.